Thanks for, oh yeah. Thanks everyone for joining. Really excited about today. Sorry about the hiccups with the tech glitches. We're excited about what we're going to try and do, and I hope this will get smoother as we go through. Everybody, feel free who's logging in. There's 27 people I can see now. Feel free to throw in any comments in the chat. What we're going to do today is a little bit different format than what we've done in the past. We're going to have a breakout room or attempt to have a breakout room at the end. I'm very excited to try and create more networking opportunities for everybody, um, just in general, but also through these webinars because we often have multiple webinars throughout the year, and this is one of those ways for us to do more of it. Um, Shaping success. Thanks for joining us. It's a labor of love, I would say, between Christine, myself, Afton, and her team at Scribe, and Leo, also from Creo Creative. We've got a lot to cover today. News and updates. We're already a couple minutes behind, but I'll catch up. We're going to talk about, hey, Trevor, the current ROI reality, crafting our ROI story, the roadmap to impact, and then discussion. First, a couple of exciting news bits I wanted to share with you guys. Uh, you might have noticed we have a new site and CRM. And so there's events now that have been published up until March. So there's lots of stuff that's happening there. We've got new programs that we're offering. So there's an effectiveness system. I'm going to talk about that in a second that we're going to be offering. It's a measurement system that we're going to get offer training on. Strategy Week is bigger and better than ever. We have 6 webinars, 3 workshops, 1 panel event that's happening during Strategy Week, which is also published on our website. The Trends event is also the save the date on there. We've got Studio Bell reserved, so it's a really cool space. And thanks to Nikechi for helping us get that set up. And we've got some new partners I wanted to talk about. So Sverige and Assur, we'll also talk about them again in a second. The CMA and the CMA, so the Canadian Marketing Association and us, we've been chatting over the course of the summer. We're going to do a bit of an exchange um, for an event they're hosting in Calgary. So everybody will be getting a code from the Canadian Marketing Association to attend an event at their membership pricing. And then we're going to offer something similar to the Canadian Marketing Association members in Alberta for our Trends event. The gathering, there's been a code that's sent out, so anybody hasn't got a ticket yet, please take a look at that and ask for the ticket or the code if you haven't got it. And then also NABS, we've done the fundraising in the past, and we're going to be working with them more over the course of the next year and helping to do more fundraisers. So we're really excited about that. Given the time, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but I'm very excited about our partnership with Sverige and Assur. So they are essentially the agency marketing association in Sweden, and like nationally around all Sweden. And so we've been collaborating on how we can bridge the gap between our community and their community. So think of it like a sister city kind of thing. We're going to share insights, reports like the one we're going to present today, best practices, and do some potentially joint workshops and webinars. So excited about this partnership. The first thing that we're going to share is there's a course they offer called the Effectiveness System. And so it's a measurement program that they devised. So it's based on evidence. And so we're going to start working with them on offering that to all of you and all of our members at membership pricing. So today we've got myself and Christine that are presenting on this report. As I mentioned, Scribe National with Afton has been great at helping us put this together. Leo from Creo Creative has designed this report, and then Stone Olson has been providing a lot of obviously the research, but also the thinking behind all this. And so just want to say thanks to all of them. It's a definite collaborative experience building this, and it's been a year in the making. So I'm excited to get this out to you. You may have seen versions of this in the past. So we've asked before all of our members, like, what are your biggest challenges? And so measuring brand or advertising effectiveness is a big one. Difficulty developing my network. I'm going to set that one aside for now. Justifying marketing budgets, finding credible sources of information. These things are fundamental and they've been pervasive for a number of years. So we wanted to dig in and try and create some thought leadership around that, in part because when we had a session last year during Strategy Week, we had talked to about 50 people from a variety of different backgrounds and positions, but a lot, all of them from the Calgary area, and said, what would have to be true for Calgary to become known as a world-class marketing community? And so thought leadership, positioning, education, celebrating our community were all really important ways for us to become known. And so this report is an exempt expression of that. Christine and I were fascinated by this comment we saw from the CFO at McDonald's. And normally, when we think about ROI and budgets, normally the CFO we often think of as an enemy, people cutting budgets and that kind of thing. But in McDonald's case, Ian Borden, the CFO, was at Cannes last year and said that marketing is one of the most important investments they make to drive business growth at McDonald's. And so we're fascinated by that, and we wanted to dig into it. Christine?
So the report that we put together that Mark's been talking about, it's a combination. It's the 124 members that we had participate in this study, giving us the thoughts about our local market and what we're doing for measurement today, what's working for us, what isn't. And then we tied that into some of the best thinking that we could stand on the shoulders of to bring it together for a really comprehensive look at it. So that's simply what it is. It's a combination of the insights from all of you and what you shared with us, as well as taking all those points and bringing in thought leadership as to what we could do to improve our performance at demonstrating the fact that marketing really is driving value and growth and how to get better at showing that.
Yeah, and so this report is really broken into four parts, and so we're not covering all the copy that's in there. It's a really good report, and everybody's going to get a copy of this as a follow-up email. And so if you ever have any questions about where to find it or how to get it, please let us know. But section one, Christine and I are going to alternate. So what do we mean by ROI and why it matters? And it sounds like a really obvious question, but it isn't necessarily as obvious. When we thought, back to some historical things, John Wanamaker is considered by a lot of people as the father of modern advertising. He ran a department store in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, and he's famous for having made this comment that half my advertising is wasted. Trouble is, I just don't know which half. Fast forward about 100-ish plus years, I was in a meeting not that long ago, a couple of years ago, where we had gone through a whole bunch of reports, literally like poured out every piece of data that we had to the board. And at the end of it, they had said, great, but did it work? And so what we were struck by is that over 125 years, this is a really persistent problem and understanding what ROI is. And so not to say that we're trying to solve the ROI problem, but we want to have a better position on it and thinking around it and how we could help our membership base. When we did the survey, we found that 86% of the people that we surveyed include marketing metrics in corporate KPIs, which is great. I mean, having marketing at a seat at the table with talking about marketing KPIs in relation to other business KPIs at a boardroom is awesome. Some of the measurement priorities that were indicated, so improving long-term positioning, defending budgets at 52%, and then improving long-term revenue and profit. So these are obviously probably a lot of things that you guys have talked about in the past in your own businesses and with your own executive team. So probably not unfamiliar. But one thing that really stuck out for us was that only 16% of the people we surveyed felt confident in their long-term metrics. So even though the long-term impact was a priority, the confidence we had in reporting on that wasn't as high. And so we identified this sort of gap that we're calling a confidence gap, and we think is really important to address and to acknowledge, so that we can then move forward and trying to figure out how to fix it. Part of the challenge with return on investment is that it means a lot, but it doesn't mean everything we think it means. And it's a single metric, like, say, NPS, that oftentimes we try and boil things down into a single metric that is the metric in the moment, the metric that matters. In reality, there's a lot of things that matter. And I think to really help us understand return on investment, we really need to define what it is. And so there's two specific challenges that we think is really um, limiting our ability in providing better outcomes and better reports on ROI. One is misattribution. And so with that, what I mean is not just between channels, like Google will claim credit for conversion and Facebook will claim credit or Amazon will claim credit, but also within the business. When we talk about ROI, and Christine will talk about this later, we often think about ROI as being like your business divided by your marketing spend, or your revenue divided by marketing spend, or revenue and marketing spend, without having consideration for the sales team, the product distribution plan, whether the stores are open or not. There's staffing issues. All those things really go in towards ROI. And if they're not all working together, then we misattribute all of the revenue as being a result of exclusively the marketing department or not. And then the other part is the time mismatch, in that often we look at there's pressure to have sales today, sales this weekend. And so we put a message in the market, a stimulus in the market, and expect a return today. But it doesn't always work like that. There's a category demand for every category, or level demand for every category, and you can't always force people to buy when they don't want to. So there's a bigger impact over time, but we're not always measuring that over time. And as we mentioned before, there's a lack of confidence in measuring over time. Interestingly, I had actually interviewed Professor Colin Powell's well, a couple of years ago anyway. He brought this point up to me that ROI is not a measure of effectiveness. And so it's interesting thinking about that, because I always thought it was. And so essentially his comment was that it's a measure of efficiency. It's your bang for your buck. And so one of the takeaways that we had is that we think it's important to have two sets of KPIs, that you measure things that are effective over the long term, like you're doing the right things. So things like market share, market penetration, message recall, or brand recall. And then things are more efficient over time. So that's where the ROI comes in, or the cost per lead, or the cost per reach. And so you can chase after things that are just efficient, but not actually produce a meaningful outcome and a good business result. Christine?
All right. So with that in mind, we just sort of wanted to talk about the measures that are being used today, that we identified, and what we think is really working with them and what isn't. So the first point being, it's not that people that are part of the association aren't actually doing measures. So on average, if you move to the next slide. On average, we're using about 7.4 measures and a full range of about 28 different metrics. So people are using quite a few different metrics to take a look at the business. And that makes sense. And it's certainly defensible with CFOs and executives and boards, because in accounting, for example, you would never look at only one metric to explain your business. But I think which measures people are interested in really varies by position. So the top three KPIs, depending on what level people are at, really vary. So if you take a look at boards of directors and owners, incremental value, 62% of the time they're looking for that. The value of the brand, the revenue driving potential, it's all either those very high top line growth driven metrics or bottom line. Execs and leaderships tend to look at KPIs that they're responsible for. So things like likely to recommend, that's a big one, because it was like part of a real enterprise push years ago, saying it would be the only metric you will need. We still see echoes of it, and it's not necessarily a bad one. It's just, it was a little bit overused as a KPI, I think. Brand sentiment, certainly in that differentiation and brand intent. Directors, the ones that actually have to place the budget, they're looking at the things that they can pull the levers and allocate money and then get some attribution behind. So things like familiarity, digital conversion, cost per reach. And then owners and individual contributors, it's kind of a mix, because they have to have one hat as owner and one hat as doing the applied. So what people care about and the answer that they're looking for really depends on the position. And I think that's where our challenge comes in. It's not that the 7 metrics that we're doing are wrong. It's just that if we're taking a look at who we're trying to present them to, the expectations are different. So if we're talking about leadership, their expectations are those top level metrics. Um, Strategic ones, revenue, market share, brand strength. We have to have a way to connect back and to have an answer for what we're doing with that. Hence, what Mark was talking about, we put everything out on the table and they still asked if it worked. If you don't translate what you're working to those, you're going to lose them. In terms of the what we're reporting a lot of the times that they're having trouble interpreting clicks, impressions, views, shares, the thing we look for the efficiency side, that's all important to us. We have to be able to look at two channels or two tools and consider, do we want to allocate differently? Are we getting our most out of this, or do we need to pair it with something else? So it's not that these aren't important to look at, they really are, but that really shouldn't be floating up to the strategic or executive level, or at least explain only a part of it. And I think that's where we have to start dividing our metrics so that we're using the right thing to explain the right challenge. And I kind of have this little view that I think everybody in the organization should be looking at from a marketing perspective. Keep in mind whether you're doing the very tactical decision making, whether you're a director that's trying to secure the KPIs and the committed performance indicators, or an executive trying to determine how well your department is doing, looking at it first from the business and value. What is the organization trying to achieve? Thinking about brand value and the measurement of that. Then in the middle, looking at the KPIs and the metrics that are sort of enterprise wide. And then the tactical explaining. You're really going from the effectiveness of what your spend is doing to build the brand, to deliver that revenue, to keep the strength of the company in the long term, to the middle view, to the very tactical short term that should be nimble. And by keeping those tactical measures in the more operating group and not necessarily presenting them forward, it actually gives you the room and flexibility to fail on some of them. Because if you're not finding things don't work, you're not really pushing the envelope of what you should be doing. And so for a healthy marketing organization, those tactical measures, you should be able to pull the levers now and then and say, you know what, this one didn't perform as well. We're changing it without having to say, our marketing isn't working. It's putting too much on it. So really calibrating those measures to the right level, I think, is the key. And I think that's where ROI, quite frankly, really falls in that tactical level as opposed to the top. And it's just simply been misused, I think, is what our problem is.
By the way, if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop them into either the chat or the Q&A while we're doing this, because we can try to address some of those questions as we're going through it. Okay, section 3 in the report is what we call the digital paradox. This is in billions, which is a really big number. There's some really big numbers in terms of how much money is being spent on digital, well, on all media, this specifically to the US. But in more importantly, is that about 2/3 of those dollars are being spent on digital channels. And so makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways, in part because, there's eyeballs there, and there's also more channels, fragmentation of media. There's more and more channels that are happening. There's more and more targeting that's available to us. There's uh, more data than we've ever had accessible to us in the past. And so there's this concept or idea that we have that there's a digital superiority or superiority with digital channels. There's better attribution, there's better targeting, there's better measurement. Um, and so between the eyeballs and the superiority part, it's really drawing us to spend more and more marketing budgets there. The weird part is that despite having better everything, our confidence in measurement erodes over time. So we found that 50% of the marketers that we measured had a soft confidence in short-term measurement, and that decreased to 40% when you looked at the long term. And so it's a really interesting component of what we're doing, despite having all of this amazing technology at our fingertips. We're still having a coin flip chance of being able to prove ROI in the short term by the looks of it. And that confidence in being able to present data, sorry, I'm stuttering, presenting really compelling data for the long term is really, really tricky, and it becomes harder and harder. And so we're calling this a digital paradox. and which is, I think, really important. One of the things that we think is really valuable to use against this digital paradox is a reimagining, let's call it, or rethinking of the models we use. So we typically use things like a funnel to explain things. Attention, interest, desire, action. So you've got this funnel at the top, you put dollars in and you stimulate the market to create awareness, then drive interest, drive desire, and then action at the end. And so I mean, it's a model, and like all models, it's wrong. But it's useful because a lot of people are familiar with it. There's other models, a whole bunch of them, that are out there. This one is called the cash flow funnel, which reflects a little bit more reality on how consumers are buying. And it's also a very CFO friendly language or model, with very CFO friendly language that I think is helpful for us to consider when we're looking at ways to do reporting. So the premise of this is that based on evidence in any given market, this is a rule of thumb. This is not necessarily exact, but there's about 5% of people who are currently, of all buyers who are currently in market today. And that 5% number is the rule of thumb. It isn't exactly that for every business, but you can figure out what it is pretty quickly by just asking them, doing a market survey and finding out how many people are buying within whatever your sales cycle is. So that means that in general, there's about the majority of the market is out of market today. And so if you have that idea of in market versus out of market, you can talk about how you're going to convert the people who are in market today, and then what you can do to drive future cash flows or influence future cash flows from the out of market buyers who will become tomorrow's customers. Christine?
All right. So with all of that said, how can we sort of simplify things and give them more oomph behind the analysis that we're doing? So just starting with why ROI is such a top concern. Sorry, I can't move these forward, so it's
Yeah,
a little
my bad.
it's a little bit
My
clunky.
bad.
No worries. The reason ROI is such a top concern is I think it was a study around 2020-ish by Brown Finance found that 77% of CFOs just liked it. It's practical for investment decisions. They think about marketing as being, variable or decision based in what they're doing. That's kind of where it came from. And it just frankly got misused because of the timing. But that's why ROI has such a legacy. And when the CFO tells you it should be ROI that you're using to talk to me about your performance, you don't usually argue with them because it's kind of like the doctor, they're the expert. You kind of go with what they're saying. And I think what we need to consider is that here's the challenge or the corner that we paint ourselves into. The fastest way to increase your ROI is to actually decrease your marketing. Yet we can stand on the shoulders of boatloads of research that's done to say strong brands ultimately outperform financially. So, this is something that we can share with them. But if we want to get back to the CFO that truly starts to look at marketing as that investment to drive growth, there's a way with which we use the information and structure our metrics. So one of the things is what percent of our time that we're using for honing those measurement metrics. Right now, it's only 8%. We're not spending a lot of time on it. We're not doing a lot of training on it. If I can just make a case for spend a little bit extra, it's not going to be as big as everything else. But that whole thing about if you put a little bit of time in now to really think about it and get strategic about it and the way that you're going to use the metrics and learn them, it really will save you time later. So it's a pretty small part now. The only thing less than that is personal and team development. I would make a case for getting strategic early so that you don't spend your time later defending your budget, which is ultimately going to take more time later. And then in terms of the approach to that strategy, here's what it would look like. First of all, I can't tell you for the breadth of clients, the several hundred clients that we've worked with, how often people actually forget to link their marketing strategy to the company goals. They know it's general things like we want our brand to do stronger and we want our top line sales. But have you ever did the strategic plan and really pulled out and said, okay, these 4 things you're talking about, this is top line. These 3 things, they're about mitigation and loyalty. Really starting to connect what your marketing strategy looks like and your marketing plan looks like and connecting it to specific company goals that are stated is going to give you a good framework with which to present your performance. The second thing that you're going to do is really understand the audiences that are fundamental to deriving those results. Not all audiences are the same. It costs to look at every one of them. So really pull out the ones that matter. Think about whether it's repeat, whether it's penetration, whether it's awareness and emerging into a new market, but build the understanding around that audience. And then three, pull out the goals that are really going to link to those measures. So when you know the goals that you're looking for, top line, middle, bottom line, risk mitigation, whatever they are, when you've identified the audiences that are most pivotal to that, then start talking about the links. And now you're connecting to a story that they'll understand. And then thirdly, really take the time to explain it. And what we're really encouraging our clients to do is to show it along two views. I'm going to show you the measures that show how effective our brand is working. These are the things we've managed to accomplish. And then I'm going to talk about the efficiency of our spend and really couch it in when it comes to efficiency. We don't expect everything that we've done to have a positive return. That's how we're testing and pushing the envelopes. But as long as it's being effective and we're moving towards it, we can tweak and refine the efficiency. All those kinds of things like how much do you spend on social versus digital versus outdoor versus a direct campaign or maybe an event? It's really important to talk about the efficiency and interplay as opposed to the effectiveness. Otherwise, in a really finite short term, you're going to plow it all into short term that really hurts you later. So we know, for example, there's boatloads of evidence to show that digital marketing in combination with static marketing like outdoor outperforms. It makes both healthier. You will never see that if you don't actually pull apart and look at those individually. So that's just a little framework. Don't forget goals. Understand and call out the audiences that are going to matter most to that plan. Select, identify, and link the measures, and then speak to them and educate those ahead of you in the organization between these are the ones that we're going to talk about the effectiveness and the big bets with the brand, and these are the ones that won't. And so this is also just sort of my last little point about ROI. It's not necessarily a bad measure. We're not just saying don't use ROI, but use it appropriately. And frankly, I think it belongs at a really, really tactical measure. It's an efficiency measure. To Mark's point, get your timing right. Make sure that the time that you're delivering that sales in the numerator, half of the equation, really capture the life cycle and know what that buying cycle is for your audience and what % of your audience could possibly even respond. So you've got a reasonable target. Then make sure that you're only attributing the incremental marketing costs to that. And oftentimes, I think ROI is best used to simply compare two possible channels or two possible tactics. It's really rare that you can look at it as a total campaign because there's just too many variables to hold constant. So that would be my best advice. Make sure that you're using it for the right time and allocation. Make sure that the time horizon is appropriate and you really know your buying cycle and the % attainable for that time. And then determine if you've actually got the data to prove it. It's really scary when people go to proxy numbers because they've committed to giving an ROI and they don't actually have appropriate data to do it. You might have, it's great, but if you don't, then you need to think about who the questions are who you need to ask for that data so that you can fill out the form appropriately and then present it in a way that it truly is a tactical measure for you. So that would be my best advice when I see this work really, really well and help people make decisions versus when people hold up a campaign and then feel really vulnerable because they didn't have the right time horizon, or it looks like the campaign necessarily wasn't doing its job when in fact it could have very well defended some serious competitive inroads. So have that context, know your horizon, and then really use it ideally as a tactical efficiency measure more than anything. Yeah, so that's ready for Q&A.
Thanks, Christine. Um, Feel free to throw, I have a webinar chat here. I don't know if anybody's put anything in the Q&A. I don't see anything in there. So feel free to put any questions into the chat if you have anything. And then maybe Derek, if you can jump back in, we can maybe you can kick off a few people here. or kick off with a question you might have.
Yeah, we
Hey,
actually have
Carol.
a couple questions already here. One from Wendy. Hey, Wendy. Um, Her question is, how do people measure brand strength?
Yeah. Christine probably has done it a lot. Do you want to take a stab at that, Christine?
Yeah, I know there's a lot of canned models out there that you can subscribe to, but unless they contain share price and you're publicly traded, they tend to be a little bit misleading in what's included because every industry, what drives brand strength, which we define as incremental brand value, will vary a little bit. So that's a little bit of a meatier conversation, but typically what we do is calibrate brand performance on measures that matter for that sector against revenue over time and look at what that coefficient of determination looks like. So we've done it for several companies. It takes a little bit of time to get there, but there's some things that go into it that you can look at all the time. So for example, salience, really, really good measure of brand strength. Consideration for next is a pretty good measure of brand strength. Those tend to correlate to the value metrics that I was referring to, but happy to chat about it further if you want to contact me. It's a bit long-winded to explain in a Q&A, but
I,
it's long term. Was that helpful? I don't know.
yeah, I think it's
Okay.
good. Just to kind of add on a couple other things. And if anybody's got any comments on how they've done it, please feel free to add that in chat. But a couple of quick and dirty ways, like without having to go to market survey to do it, would be direct traffic to your website or organic traffic to your website. Both of those things can be tracked and influenced by your brand, so that your brand is more memorable to people, the more likely they are to search for your brand by name. And so that's a thing. There's a lot of research that's really interesting for it's typically for larger companies, but if anybody's interested in looking up share of search, there's a whole bunch of work that's been done on share of search. So what you can do, because Google is essentially the world's largest database of human intent, you can download the brands in your category, your brand plus the brands in your category over however long you want to look at that, and then look at the search volume. So it's indexed. It's not exactly an exact number of how many searches happen, but it's indexed relative to the category searches. And so what you'll get out of that is a whole bunch of numbers over a period of time. And then you can graph your share of search compared to the competitors. And what they found, and typically this is where you need to have a certain size in order for it to show up, size of brand in order for it to show up in the search. But what they found is that search peaks precede sales by about 6 months. So you can, and it reflects a lot around the consumer pattern of buying. So that idea of like in market versus out of market, you can see a lot of those changes there. Now there's some challenges with that research and that things like PR disasters might influence people's search and might inflate or misrepresent the impact that will have downstream on sales. But there's a lot of really great stuff on that share of search.
Yeah, and to that end, Tag Manager within always helps. The ranking of search isn't what we're talking about in Google Analytics 4. You have to kind of set it up a little bit through Tag Manager, but you can actually set up for that. And it's a bit fiddly to get started, but I agree with Mark. I think share of search is a really good proxy. And I know that AI, more people are moving search into AI. But Google is still indicative. It's still a good sampling of what's happening, I would say.
Yeah, another question here. We've got a few actually. We'll move on to this question from Carol here, who well talks about how Mark, you kind of mentioned that, two-thirds of spend is kind of allocated to digital, and then Christine, you talked about kind of the power between digital and traditional. Um, I guess the comment here is really a few years back, it seemed that the balance between digital and traditional was balancing out. and it sounds like things are skewing back to digital again. So, just wondering about your thoughts in that. Mark, did you want to go first?
Sure. I have a lot of thoughts, not
I
surprisingly.
knew you did. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a whole bunch of things at play with this. One is that generally speaking, digital inventory is just quicker and easier to access. So I don't really need anything to sign up for a Google account, and I can get access to search, I can get access to YouTube, I can get access to display, PMax, all that kind of stuff. I can be on TV, and quote unquote, all those kinds of things. And so, um, it's really easy in comparison. If I want to get on TV, like through traditional media, it takes a little bit more time, and it's not a hard thing to do. It just takes some more time. And if I want to be on, say, the Super Bowl, I mean, there's obviously a giant cost there. So there's some things there I think that are keeping people on the digital side. There's the other component around just the flexibility of targeting and the perception that we can target everybody and every individual person on the planet, and that is really appealing. Um, on the other hand, though, there's a whole bunch of stuff around, um, well, AI overviews as an example. Like I was talking to somebody recently, not just last week, early last week, who had said that they're seeing 20-30% decreases in paid search traffic because people are just using AI overviews and they're not getting the traffic they were used to getting.
Mhm.
Also, cookies are getting cut, and so now cookies are, as the cookie depreciation is happening, there's more and more people that are realizing that maybe the cookie tracking isn't as good as what we hoped it would be, or isn't as reliable as what it would be. So there's more and more people that I think it will ebb and flow between digital and traditional. I think where it's netting out though is that the idea that digital is going to kill traditional media is not a thing anymore. I think everybody realizes there's some value in that, in both. Um, but I think it's just the flexibility and the accessibility of digital that's making it easier, especially with increased pressure from sales or on sales targets and from CFOs improving ROI. There's more perception that we can, down to the Excel spreadsheet line, prove an ROI or ROAS on every individual ad, which is a misnomer, but it's still a thing that people believe.
Seen
Yeah.
any, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the thing to think about too is, back to that, do that little bit of extra thinking up front. What were the goals? Who are the audiences that are going to reach those goals? Now, what activation for what you're trying to achieve would make the most sense? Because, yeah, we are absolutely in a digital world, fluidly at all times, without question. But we find us constantly in our post-campaign research that it's good for a specific role, really great at awareness, really great if you've got a call to action specifically embedded, not so great for the long-term sticky things or positioning. Sometimes you need some other tools that have more breakthrough. So I think just thinking a little bit ahead of time and not making allocation decisions with your budget on FOMO. That's so easy to do. Well, everybody's digital. We just have to run
Mm.
in. Sort of, but unless you've got as much to spend as your competitors are in exactly the same space, it's gonna bounce off the wall a little bit, and you don't want that to happen if resources are precious. So I think about what the best activation is, and then think about some things that can stand out and work together. Oftentimes, we found like something as simple as a billboard or a sponsorship, or the one that I'm fascinated by is service as a
Hmm.
marketing tool, doing something to be helpful, and then following that up with digital. Those are all showing really, really great synergistic results. So that's where I think just, what's the right allocation? It kind of depends.
Yeah, that's great. Megan, I see your question here. I think that would be a great prompt when we get to the breakout rooms in a bit. So I'll get back to that in a bit here. But I think I'm going to hit up Richard's question here. So Richard works at a smaller organization looking to build on their brand. What are some lower cost ways of measuring brand performances? And he follows up here kind of talking about, yeah, there are a lot of tech companies that measure specific metrics, your meltwaters and so on. But they're pretty expensive for a lot of smaller organizations. So curious to see what you folks might want to recommend in terms of finding lower cost ways of measuring brand performance.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sorry, go
oh, go
ahead,
ahead.
Christine. Okay.
I was just going to say, I think there's a lot that you can squeeze out of Google Analytics and a lot of people aren't using it to its potential. There's some less expensive social tools, but then also practically doing there's a lot of free information out there about your sector and your size that you can extrapolate and just see how you're doing if your share is moving forward or backwards. So there's a lot of secondary research out there that I wouldn't ignore that you can calculate on, and then squeezing everything you can out of the digital tools that are accessible.
Just to add on to that too, there's things like, and we don't think about it always about brand, but things like pricing. There's an amazing case study if anybody's interested in looking at it on McCain chips. It's based out of the UK, and it was something when the chips are down. I forget the rest of the headline of that paper, but the paper itself kind of looks at McCain chips, and you've probably all seen this story play out in your own grocery store. More and more of the retail space is on the grocery store shelves is being taken up by private label. And so McCain's was like, we got a problem because there's cheaper products that are taking over more and more of our sales. And so they ran a campaign over 9 years, and the brand impact that happened is that year over year over year over year for 9 years, they were able to increase revenue by increasing price. And the and so it's a massive impact. And so I think price is often something we overlook as one of the levers of what the impact a brand can have. It's not always to say that you have to be the most expensive. It's just that you can move the needle by increasing a customer's willingness to pay.
Yeah, I think I found that article. Actually, I'll share that in the chat momentarily here. But while I find that link, um, Trevor has a question here in terms of how we measure specific impacts of AI. So we're thinking about optimization, content generation, brainstorming, etc. So how do we measure the specific impact of AI on our marketing efforts? And how do you communicate kind of the value gained cost versus revenue?
I'll jump in, Christine, and if you don't mind, and then feel free to follow up. But I would say like it's not really a thing in my mind. The business outcome is the thing. And so if AI makes whatever we're doing more efficient, then that's the one measure you might want to look at. But AI as an outcome is rarely the business outcome. Even for ChatGPT or Gemini, they're looking at revenue as a result of the AI tools they have. So I think if you put it in the context of the business outcomes that you have, then any efficiency metrics might be helpful. There's lots of stuff you can do with AI. Um, but I think that's really it's a trap. I think social and digital is a thing as well, where there's a shiny object and they're puking data at us. And so we get misled to think the data that they're puking is the business outcomes that we're trying to resolve or report on, when in fact, I think that's when you get into a situation like I was in where they're like, great, you have all this data. Did it work? Ultimately, what they're trying to say, what they really meant was, what was the incremental revenue we got out of doing this stuff over and above what we would have had anyway? I don't know if that helps, Trevor.
Yeah, and I think to that end, I think everybody wants to know what it's been doing, but some of it, it's kind of like pulling a cup of water out of a bucket. It's going to slide in with other things. Like if you get any time available from using AI for efficiencies, you're not gonna take that and give that time back to the company off your salary. Most people are treading water right now, just trying to keep up because everybody's using AI to get more efficient. So business starts moving more efficiently, and that's what happens. But this is a massive topic for CEOs right now is how are you using AI? There's kind of an expectation that marketing is going to lead this a little bit. So I think keeping track of where you've gotten the wins, even from a tangible perspective, this is what we've been able to produce. This is what's happened. These activities we've noticed. Those are just important things to bring everybody's shoulders around the board table down that we are keeping up. We are applying where it makes sense. We're finding these opportunities are working. Be honest about these are the ones that aren't. That kind of communication, I think marketing really is looked upon to be a key group for that. So I think we kind of keep track of it that way. And then I'll also say a plug for our next survey coming out for trends. One of the things that we're going to be asking about is where people have had efficiencies or gains through AI. And so hopefully we'll have some ammo for you to take back to say, these are the top ways that people are getting improvements in our market today. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. We'll just get to one more question here before we attempt to do the breakout rooms. Here's a question from John. With all the changes to search, digital advertising, et cetera, we're constantly looking for effective channels to really connect and engage with our audiences. It also seems that our audiences are also starting to crave more authentic in-person experiences, which basically leads them to kind of more sponsorship, experiential event opportunities. But if we think measurement for digital and traditional is tough, how does one effectively capture the sum of sponsorships and experiences on the equity and performance of a brand?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. Go ahead,
I
Christine.
feel like eh, we've done proxies for this. So I mean, one thing we need to be honest about, we can't hold all variables constant. So there's never a perfect. We held everything constant, and this is exactly how much we can attribute to this activity or this activity. It's not like that, but the one thing that we have seen in data that we've been tracking over time is this is generally speaking the lift in all of the things that we're talking about, recognition, awareness, sentiment, salience, when we only use digital. And this is when we're using digital following an activation or in conjunction with an activation. And you can see those deltas. So there is some secondary research with really good studies that we can pull from for this. That's how I know about the fact that, for example, billboard with social tends to work better. We've seen it in some of our own clients' data. So you've got some secondary to put wind behind your sails and making those. It's something that can be done over time with tracking. It's not perfect, but you can get a pretty close approximation.
Carol, I'm laughing, John. Sorry for the tough question mark. Carol made me ask. Um, so just to build on what Christine was saying too, like models can help a lot. And I just wanted to come back to this cash flow model because there's some really practical things that's built into this, and you probably need to spend a lot more time for it to become second language or a natural language for you and understanding about it. But one of the things is, let's assume, or what we should all assume, it started at a point where nobody cares about marketing. Like the average consumer doesn't care. Start there, rather than with an assumption that everybody cares and they're going to pay attention and do all the things that we tell them to do. There's just a ton of evidence that tells us that the first point is really important. And why this cash flow model helps explain that is that like I'm not going to buy a car today. There's a whole bunch of car ads that I've been exposed to. I don't even notice them because I'm just not in the market to buy a car. So when we think about things like in-person events, I agree, like they're really important. They're an important brand touch point. Sampling products is a really important touch point. Conferences and events, like they're really important experiential things that are part of the whole media mix. But if we evaluate all that stuff based on how many people do we get to buy today, it's the short term the cash flow, like in-market buyers, that you're trying to measure just the in-market response to something that is maybe doing something that's more of a future building, a future customer building activity. And so I think having the justification with a model that's understandable, that's relatable to the business, talking about cash flow as an important part of bridging the gap between the confidence of what we're measuring in the short term versus what's happening in the business in the long term, proving effectiveness, not just efficiency. I think all those things help when you have a model like this to talk about the realities of the market, which is there's a whole bunch of people that just aren't going to care right today because they're just not in market. And so it's not to say that they're not important. They're really important. It's because you're going to get that's your future customer base. But measuring everything just based on the short-term ROI is also limiting in terms of what value marketing can bring to the business. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, that was excellent from the both of you. We're gonna try to break out now. I think there'll be like 3 or 4 participants per room. And I thought maybe, just to get a prompt going. Oh, you've already got prompts, Mark. Look at you. Okay. Yeah, so basically here are some prompts here that Mark already put together. Um, so yeah, if you're gonna stick around here, I'm just gonna attempt to do this. Stand by, but basically, we'll just do this for 5 minutes and then you'll get a countdown and we'll return back into the webinar room here. So we'll see you in a sec. I think.
Dig.
Oh, it's
Am I
recording
in
our
the right
briefing. Wow.
space?
I think so. Oh, hey, it's Megan. It's the one who asked
Yeah,
that question.
yeah,
Well, you're in the right room with Christine here. That's really
amazing.
nice. Yeah. Yeah. I would love to, Christine, maybe you could help out with Megan's question here. You talked about kind of finding better ways to align KPIs across, all levels of your organization.
Yeah,
Are there any resources, courses, white papers?
yeah.
We've got this report coming out that we could use that might help you.
Well, and maybe I'll give you a little more context too. So, I'm the interim manager of brand and marketing at the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, and we didn't have a great marketing strategy. So, this over the summer, we put one together, and we did outline our KPIs that we're looking at for the next couple of years, and we did align it with our business goals. So that made me feel very proud that we started there. But I would love to get, I know there's lots of resources out there, but just some of that extra help to make sure we really are measuring the right things, especially as a smaller organization, but with a strong brand reputation. And so I'm just looking for your advice on where we should go next. Do we do kind of a gut check with this with an external consultant? Is there something I should look at for kind of best practice, that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, I think that helps to hear where you're from because with all these things, context is everything. So I always say it's usually easiest to figure it out if you first say it with words. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if Calgary Chamber is going to be successful as a brand, you want to be what? Like, what do you want people to think, feel, and do in an ideal world if you guys were realizing the full value potential that you want to have in the market? What
Mhm.
would that sound like? Is it, awareness among the business community straight up? Is it a participation or membership for certain things? Is it, reliable partner for, you know what I mean? Like first
Yeah.
say it in words and then think about the different ways that you could measure that. And I'd be happy if you want to just chat, like you're a CMA member. If you want to just have a chat about that, I'd be happy to kind of bounce them around because I know what it means. Like resources are precious, and if you do have to, if there hasn't been a strategy, my guess is it's been pretty quiet. So then you've got to kind of think about the resources well to change that as opposed to. So I know that I sell research, but at the end of the day, I would say as a starting point is see where you can, how far you can get on your own first, for sure.
Mhm.
And happy to chat with you. But first, say it in words like, we will be successful if we do A, B, and C. And then, yeah, well, which audiences are you really talking about? Well, how would we measure them delivering on that? Does
That's
that,
great. Yeah, that really helps because that is kind of how we set it up as far as like what are actual goals and targets. And then we aligned our metrics with each of those goals. So I think we're on the
yep,
right track then, and
yep,
just maybe need a little of an external nod that yes, we are. So that's helpful. Thank
yep,
you.
for sure.
I don't know if Wendy wanted to ask a
Yeah. Hey,
question too.
Wendy.
Christine, I appreciate your sharing because I think a lot of the challenges that marketers have in different sizes of organization.
Hey,
Hey,
Sorry, not sure why it's recording, but I'm just playing around with this, bouncing from room to room here. So
cool.
sorry to interrupt y'all.
No, it's
Picking
good.
on you. Yeah, we're having some really good discussion, and well, we've only got 2 rooms going now. Everyone else has left, with Christine and Megan and Wendy on the other side of things. But yeah, this is good. I hope your guys' discussion's going well too.
If you can merge them, we can just chat for a couple minutes here. I don't know if
Sure.
that works or not.
Yeah, what I'll do is actually, I'm going to close all rooms and we're going to get back into the webinar.
Okay,
You got 60 seconds before I can do that.
cool.
Oh, did it kick us
Oh,
out?
oh, it was supposed to give me 60 seconds and it never did. What the heck?
Yeah, I just went directly into this
Yeah.
room.
Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on.
Um,
We're supposed to be back in the webinar now,
Oh,
which means I think the
I'm just
participants will.
allowing everybody to talk.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
I don't know if that worked or not.
I don't know if we'll get their camera, but sorry for kicking you all out of your room. I thought I was going to get a 60-second warning, but we didn't.
I think everybody, Wendy and Carol, Dita, Richard, Megan, you should be able to speak, I hope.
I'm still here.
Oh,
Kudos to
good.
you guys for trying the rooms. I loved it. I think it's a great way to extend that. So it was awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah, I think, I mean, there's lots of ways we can improve this, but I think it's a cool way. We do so many webinars. It'd be nice to have more ways to have people interact.
Yeah, love it.
yeah, so do I.
I think
Yeah.
everybody else got scared though. So
Yeah. I almost wonder if we should do a breakout to start and like get
Hmm.
some questions within the group and have somebody be the person to ask questions through it. But we had some good conversation. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm going to
Test-
sign off too, but I appreciate everything. Thanks for helping out, Derek and Christine, and everyone else, Megan, Richard, Adidas for sticking around. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
All
Bye.
right. Have a good day. Bye.